PR Boxing. Delighted as always to be joined by Paul and Elliot. We are here to discuss what is next for Chris Eubank Jr. after his emphatic performance against Liam Smith last night. Paul, Elliot, we've done the review show. It's time to look forward now, as we like to do here at ESBR. Feel like there's a few exciting options on the table for Chris Eubank Jr., whether it be Liam Smith trilogy. Obviously, it's 1-1 now. They've both got a stoppage win over each other. The Conor Benn fight's still there. Conor Benn was ringside tonight, and I can see he's kind of done some interviews that have gone online moments after the fight was stopped. And look, Eubank could possibly move up to super middleweight, try and get a big fight there. We don't know how easily he made weight. He looked quite good at the weigh-in, but he might decide that's his last fight at middleweight. Paul, going to go to you first. What do you think's going to happen here for Eubank Jr.? What's next?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, mate. The answer to that is he's got options, as you mentioned at the beginning. He's got plenty of options, whether that be Smith, Conor Benn fighting for a world title at middleweight, going back up to 168, and fighting potentially for a world title there. There's loads of options. I think that personally, I don't want to see us next, but I could see a trilogy simply because the first fight, obviously Smith wins in 4 rounds emphatically. Second fight, which many people think we didn't need, but there was only made because there was a rematch clause. Eubank wins every minute of every round conclusively. So yeah, you're thinking, I don't need to see it again. Eubank's just gonna dominate him again if they had a third fight. But at the same time, if you're Liam Smith, you're like, well, hold on, don't forget about what happened first time around. It's one apiece here. Let's settle the scores.
Mm.
It's like, you know what I mean? It's like a cup tie. You can't have it finish in a draw. You needed to go to penalties. And I could probably see that happening. I think that's pretty realistic to happen next. At 160 again, that's my kind of immediate thoughts as to what I think will happen next. Whether or not I want to see it is a different question, but I think that's the most likely option next.
Yeah, as you said, it's 1-1. If that trilogy fight does happen, look, it's another big money fight for both fighters. It's another probably. I imagine it'll be still back in Manchester, to be honest. So I think it's a decent option for both fighters, to be honest. I think both fighters. I think Liam Smith will go in there thinking he can kind of get the better of Eubank Jr. as he's done before, and he can hurt him. And Eubank Jr. will obviously be full of confidence, so I can definitely see that happening. However, I just think there's more money in the Conor Benn fight, in my opinion. There's obviously that rivalry that stemmed for years now. They were supposed to fight last year. I think Conor Benn will fight Chris Eubank Jr. At 160, so that's an option as well. Elliot, what do you think's going to happen next? Do you agree with Paul, and you think we're going to see that trilogy, or do you think we'll see the Conor Benn fight next, or something else possibly?
No, I don't agree with Paul in the sense that I reckon we'll see that fight next. I think Eubank was quite keen to dismiss, like, I'll just move away from that trilogy. But what I do agree with Paul is actually I think that should happen next, simply for the fact that you got stopped the first time around. You say, yeah, there were mitigating reasons for that, but you can't just look at it and go, this was a sensational performance and he battered Liam Smith when Liam Smith stopped him in the fourth, in January. So I think that should happen next. I don't think it'll happen next. What I do think might happen next for me, I think the Ben fight's there. I mean, to be honest, I can see that being made, but I kind of don't want to see it either. I just don't. I still feel very, very negatively towards Ben myself. So I wouldn't like to see that. What I'd like to see is Eubank stay at middleweight. I don't think I want to see him up at super middle, frankly. And obviously, I don't think he'll fight Canelo. Those belts. I don't even think you necessarily get a fight against sort of Benafides or sort of Morel or those guys up there either. So I think I'd like to see him stay at middleweight. And to be honest with you, I know people was a bit negative towards him, calling out obviously the welters in Brook and Ben, but equally I wouldn't mind seeing him if he can get him in the ring, fight Triple G. To be honest, I can see that fight for me kind of making sense if you can get him at the right time and get another marquee name on his resume. If he stopped Triple G, for example, or beat Triple G, that would still be a big win, even though obviously Triple G is not the fighter he was. So I wouldn't mind seeing that. I don't think he'd fight someone like Zanabek, frankly. Don't think the money's there for that. But I think that's the fight for me that makes the most sense if it can be made.
Yeah, I think it was what, 2015. He was rumored to be fighting Golovkin, and Kell Brook took his place. So that'd be going back a few years now. With Golovkin, like, we don't know happened. It feels like it's gone very quiet over there. Obviously fought Canelo, I think exactly a year ago now, around that time. So we'll see. We'll see. The fight I want to talk to both of you about is the Conor Benn fight. Conor Benn still a bit unclear because the rumors he's fighting at the end of this month, I think, in America. But yeah, it's this saga has gone on. Elliot, does that fight not do a lot for you because of the issues with Conor Benn in the last few months? If it wasn't for those issues, or it had been found that he was 100% innocent, would that fight do something more for you, or not so much, just for the fact that Conor Benn is a welterweight, Eubank Jr. is a middleweight, and they shouldn't really be fighting each other?
For me, it'd be the issues around obviously what's gone on. Obviously, Conor Benn's inactivity. His general conduct hasn't warmed into me, frankly, over what has happened, even if he is found innocent. But I think it's also the weight issue for me is the main one. Like I don't want to see Eubank boiling himself down to fight Conor Benn like he was previously. So almost I feel like if that fight was going to happen, I'd want to see it happen at 160, which in some ways probably disadvantages Conor Benn, frankly. So I almost feel like it's very hard to make a fight fair between those two either way. I mean, obviously, I suppose Eubank in some ways would hold more of the cards now, potentially, given obviously what's happened with Conor Benn. But I mean, I think in a way, I'd want Conor Benn to have at least one fight coming back off the inactivity that he's had before you make that fight, and then you can kind of judge it from there. But I don't really want to see momentum for that fight building now and then it actually happening, rather than seeing him have a fight, and especially if it's any lower than 160. Frankly, I don't want to see Eubank looking as ill as he looked when he made weight for that fight previously.
Yeah, definitely. Paul, back to you. Say we're here in a month's time, which I'm sure we will be. And Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn gets announced. What would your reaction be?
Man, it's a big fight at the end of the day, isn't it? Like it's a massive fight. Whether we complain about it, and we may complain about it and say we don't want to say it, we would watch it, wouldn't we? We would all three of us here would be watching it. Let's be honest. And I'd be in the I would agree with Elliot Grigg there, saying don't necessarily want to see it, but I would definitely watch it, and it's a compelling fight nonetheless. I think what Elliot said, I think I completely concur with, is the fact that yes, he lost to Liam Smith first time around, but he's just beaten him there. If Conor Benn is next, I think Eubank says to Ben, "Listen, mate, I call the shots here. It's at 160. You're lucky I'm giving you a shot after what's going on with you this past year. I'm not cutting the 157 or whatever it was. The fight's at 160. Take it or leave it. The money's there. Blah blah blah. And I think kind of I think that there's more chance that of us seeing it at 160. But then if you're a Conor Benn, are you wanting to go up 13 pounds, basically a stone? Yeah, I know he was going up before about 10 pounds or whatever it was, but those few pounds definitely make a difference. And it's not like he's a huge welterweight as it is, Conor Benn. He's in height, I mean, and Eubank is a relatively big middleweight. So I think if it's at 160, yeah, I think Eubank should call the shots. He holds the cards, and I would probably actually see a Eubank victory there.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll give my opinion. I do think Chris Eubank Jr. will face Conor Benn. Possibly not until kind of February, March next year, but I do think that is the fight now. I know it's 1-1 with the Liam Smith thing, but I think Chris Eubank Jr. wants to fight Conor Benn, and I think Conor Benn wants to fight Chris Eubank Jr. So I do think that fight will happen. I'm going to end this with a bit of a tricky one, gents. As you know, we always like asking the tough questions here. We've discussed three fighters in this video. Liam Smith, Conor Benn, and Golovkin. Does Chris Eubank lose any of those fights? All at middleweight, all the next fight for him. I appreciate it's a tricky one, but if he was to fight any of those and you had to give me a prediction now, would you predict him to lose any of them? And if so, which? Elliot, going to go to you first. Conor Benn, Liam Smith, or Gennady Golovkin? Does Chris Eubank Jr. lose any of those if he fights any of them next?
Delicious question. He loses potentially one out of those three. I think he beats Conor Benn at 160. I think he beats Liam Smith again, frankly, at 160, even though I think Liam Smith was complacent going into this one and would be probably a closer fight again. I think he beats him if he turns up like he did today. The Golovkin one is the hard one for me. We've seen Golovkin fade. Obviously, with our third fight against Canelo, who obviously wasn't his best, but equally, he carries power in those hands. So if he catches Eubank Jr., and we've seen Eubank Jr. get stopped by Liam Smith, there's every chance he could stop him. So for me, that's the high risk fight. To be honest with you, if it happened this year, or sorry, early next year, February, I'd probably still back Triple G, to be perfectly honest with you. If he can get his jab going and land on Eubank, I'd still probably pick him. But I think the speed of Eubank would be telling in that fight. But it's heart over head possibly, but I'm not going against Triple G.
It's a tricky question, but I think you're bang on personally. I think let's not forget what Golovkin's accomplished as a fighter here. And let's not forget the trend that's been in Eubank's career when he stepped up to the top level. Paul, I can see you've got a glint in your eye. I can see you're going to possibly rustle a few feathers here as the video draws to a close. Same question to you. What happens in those 3 fights?
Yeah, I think he beats Liam Smith again. If the trilogy was to happen, I think he beats Conor Benn if it's at middleweight. And the Golovkin one, I was really interested to hear Elliot's both of your thoughts there actually on that. And I was initially going to say I think Golovkin would beat him, but having just had a quick think about it while you two were talking, part of me thinks that Eubank could actually get the job done there. I know fundamentals and everything like is in favor of Golovkin in that fight. Boxing IQ, skill, power, everything is in Golovkin's favor. Bar obviously now the speed and obviously the age. What's Golovkin by the time if they were to fight early next year, he'd be 41. He would even be 42. Like how much does he have left? Yes, he's only been beaten by Canelo, but that was a Canelo in that trilogy, and potentially Canelo on the slide. Golovkin definitely on the slide and looking older. But I wouldn't back up Eubank with any confidence. But just judging on that, I can't get that performance out of my head tonight. I know he's lost every time he stepped up to that world elite level. But you know what? Gonna go with the next gen victory over Triple G. I never ever thought I would say that.
Fair enough. We end the call disagreeing with each other, but that's I think we're all used to that by now. Elliot, Paul, been great to discuss this with you. See what happens next for Chris Eubank Jr. I think his career has been reinvigorated now. He's had a kind of a stale couple of years for various amount of reasons, but a career best performance for Chris Eubank Jr. And we're all excited to see what happens next. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, mate. Again, thank you very much, guys, for
Cheers,
watching.
gents.